was a very solemn place where our ancestors who could not make the journey southwards were left weak ones, sick ones, very vulnerable ones that could not make it again were left here, dumped here. It was a very large area with water, and they will just leave them. And at that time, the story of the story of scavengers. That is why the name of the vulture, as we all know, the vulture can smell dead meat in a lot of kilometers away. So they were always hovering around the story that we hear. They were always hovering upstairs, trying to see if people were left to die.
And you said before that the neighboring people may have buried them.
Yeah, they might have, because from the stories we hear, they were just left. So if the neighbors might not want stench, they might organize themselves to bury them. That's what we hear.
So tell me, so basically this is like a dumping ground, is what you're
dumping ground. It's a very large area. I'm sure when excavations are down, they will find some bones here.
How far back do you think it went?
And this should have been about 200 to 300 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did it stop?
It stopped at the end of the 17th century.
Okay.
But there were still pockets still going on.
Okay.
Those who could not go to the oceans, but they will be left in the south.
So, Dudu Salaga is losing his marketing power, like say 1890s. Am I correct? 1870s, from what I read.
I'm not necessarily his powers as such, but the slave trade ended. Then another version of trade came up.
That's what.
So Salaga was still strong.
Okay.
Yes, even up to the 1940s, Salaga was still the biggest place in Northern Ghana.
Okay.
Until after independence, when the main road was made, then this was the road to the south. We go here, go and cross the river, and then go into the south.
Okay. So once again, so that you're saying that with Salaga now.
Yeah.
Let's just briefly.
Yeah.
There were two sets of trading in terms of slavery. So you have the 16th, 17th century.
Yeah.
And then, or 17th, 18th century. And then you have the more 19th century.
Yeah. The 19th century was not much about slave trade. It was much about Ghana now becoming a colonial country.
Okay.
Where traveling was taking place. Okay. And then the North was brought into the colonies. Okay. Because the North was not part of the colonies at that time. After the defeat of Ashanti in the 1900s, the North was brought into that.
But what, the 1800s?
1900.
No, but so what about the 1800s?
Yeah, the 1800s. There was still pockets of slave activity, but mostly then it changed to cola nuts, guns, and things like that, but not mainly with slaves, but cash to buy, bicycles. I mean, things that would now facilitate the lives of the people. Okay. The slaves who might have gone at that time did not get the chance to travel abroad. We know of history where some of our people were left in the coast, but at that time they could not come back. So they were just assimilated, the people. So some northern practices have been recorded there, which might have been transferred from here to that place.
So basically you're saying with this cemetery here, it was more or less 17th, 18th century?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Good.
Wow.
It's also important to note that when the trade was ongoing,
let's say
when the transatlantic slave trade was abolished, there was a domestic trade, the domestic usage of captives ongoing, where they used them on the farms. Remember, they stopped the plantations, the export of captives to Americas for the plantations, and turned the plantations on the side. So we found cocoa being introduced, cotton, tobacco, etc., being introduced, tamarind and co, all being introduced and being cultivated by people, and therefore large farm plantations were established, unlike the subsistence farming that we used to do. And so all these captives were then employed, and so the domestic trade went alongside with the transatlantic trade. But when the demise of the transatlantic slave trade, the domestic trade also still went on. And so we realized that laws were enacted to abolish all these domestic trading activities. Nevertheless, although it went on, the colonialists did not turn much attention to it. They just left it because they were still benefiting from the plantations they were getting, the products they were getting out of the plantations. Yeah.